Welcome to the Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth complex, trapping data collection using ArcGIS Field Maps. That's kind of a mouthful. In short, the Spongy Moth and Flighted Spongy Moth complex are two separate maps. And since many of you switch between them during the survey season, we're going to look at both. There's not going to be any quiz to complete after. There's no pressure here, but I will stop a few times just to check your knowledge. Please just help me out and make a guess, even if you're not sure. I'll ask you to probably put that in the chat since we have quite a few of us here. If you want to raise your hand at any point, you're welcome to do that too. I do ask that you save your questions to the end, as you might find some of them answered as I walk you through this training. If you don't find them answered, I definitely want to get them answered. So I'm hoping that you will save those for me and be willing to share your questions openly. One thing that I want to show you right off the bat is just kind of this story. Like, imagine that I've invited you to an orchestra. We've just been listening to some kind of like fancy orchestra music as we waited for this to start up. So I thought it was kind of a funny way to start. Imagine being invited to, in this case, it's an orchestra concert in the park. And you're not in the audience. You're going to be playing in the orchestra. So there's a little pressure there, right? And I think probably your first question is, what do I need to know? So some of the questions you need to know: what does this concert benefit? In this case, it would be your pest. Your pest protocol is important to know. So that's what it's benefiting. Maybe what instrument you're going to play. In this case, it's the device, the mobile device that you'll use. And some of you are using the Apple iPad. Some of you are using the Apple iPhone. And we know that Androids can be used, although they're having difficulty with sign-in with our CECIT security settings right now. So probably ideal iPad or iPhone. Many prefer the iPad for the larger screen, but if you have whichever one you have handy, they work great for this. So those are the instruments you can play. And I'm going to try to show you, well, I will demonstrate things on an iPad with the bigger screen, but I'm going to give you that view of the iPhone. So if any of you want to see that and it seems like I'm not getting there, feel free to jump in and remind me, but I do have it sitting here ready to go. So I will show you both of those, but I will concentrate on the iPad so you have a better view. And then maybe what song? What song are we going to play? Well, I'm equating that to the mobile application, which in this case is the ArcGIS Field Maps application. Your pest protocol, you should go to Anthony Man-Son-Hing. He is your National Operations Manager for Spongy Moth, both Spongy Moth and the Flighted Spongy Moth complex. And so if you don't have that information, I would encourage you to do that. These are things that you should already have in your wheelhouse that you feel good about before coming to this training and moving right on into the data collection side. If you don't have that information, the very most important thing that you need, I'm going to put the link in our chat here for you, and I'm going to show you this website. It is a public-facing APHIS website, and the link should take you here to the Mobile Data Collection Tools main page. The video for this training we're doing here today will show up at the bottom under the video gallery. You can search for it by title, or it'll be under pest program, or it might show up right at the top there. And something that you really need to pay attention to ahead to practice that song is the sheet music maybe. So here under pest program specific training documents, I have it open. Search for your pest by name. And we've got Flighted Spongy Moth Complex here, 2 little documents. Same thing for Spongy Moth all on its own, 2 little documents. The user manuals have on the second page what we call a dynamic table of contents. So you can jump to the page you need to. I'm going to jump to this overview page. This is very important this year, and why we're having another training this year, because there's a few additional fields that have been added to both. And in this case, on that trap sites form, there's a new required field. So you can see that right here, the survey classification field. It's defaulted to port and waterway. This is for our flighted spongy moth complex. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that. And then also a calculated field for cumulative specimen count. And this makes your work every day really important because it is being updated by a script nightly. So every day when you are out there collecting data and you're adding numbers to this specimen count, it's being updated every night when you synchronize your data. So that's an important thing to take note of. In your trap activities table, there's also an optional field now for the survey type. And there's a field for number of suspects collected. And if there is a number in there, you're asked to provide a sample name. If the number is 0, or or less than 0, I guess is not possible, or greater than 0, it's going to give you a sample name. If it's 0, you won't get that field. I'll show you what that looks like, but I want you to know where to go to see this information. So keep this website handy, this mobile data collection tools website. I'm going to show you, I showed you the flighted spongy moth. Let's look at the spongy moth user manual. And again, it's that third page, the overview and what's new. Again, same thing. It also has that field, the cumulative specimen count, that is updated nightly. And then it's got that same kind of setup in the activity table, a required field for the survey type. And also, if you enter a number of suspects collected, it will ask you for the sample name. If that says 0, it won't ask you for a sample name. And then also a new reference layer for that specimen count that's being updated nightly. Just help you kind of gauge and talk to your supervisors about where to capture maybe more trapping activity. Okay, so keep that handy and at your side. One other thing to look at here, we talked about knowing something about that application, and the ArcGIS Field Maps application also has a user guide under the general training documents, and there's also a whole series of videos for you to watch here on the ArcGIS Field Maps application. I believe there's 10, and it took me about maybe an hour and a half to get through. So I would encourage you, even if you used this last year, at least pick off a few and give yourself a review and make sure that you feel really comfortable with that. Okay, so those are the important things for you to know. So today, all together with you all, we're gonna plan our route. We've started to plan it a little, what you should know before you come to this orchestra in the park and play this beautiful music called Trapping. We're gonna talk through the data collection. So I'm going to talk you through it, then I'm going to show you on the iPad, like I said, and I'll try to remember on the iPhone too. And then we're going to just kind of go over some takeaways. If there's one thing you walk away with, and I already know that you've probably all noted, the one thing you want to definitely walk away with is that website that I just gave you in the chat. Make sure that you always go there first to look for information or anything you need there. And again, like I said, there's going to be a couple of knowledge checks along the way. So just be ready to help me out. Let me know that you know what I'm talking about or that you don't. Even if you make a guess and it's a wrong answer, it is an opportunity for me to explain it a little bit better. So I take it as my responsibility to make sure we get that right. Okay, so diving in, we talked a little bit about the mobile device being an iPad or an iPhone as your best course of action. We talked about the importance of understanding survey protocol, and planning this route starts by gaining access to the spongy moth or flighted spongy moth map that's been developed in this ArcGIS Field Maps application. And again, make sure that you're familiar with the application. What's important here today is just to make sure that we're signing in correctly. You get this kind of sign-in screen when you first open Field Maps, and we are always going to pick this sign in with ArcGIS Enterprise. And what I want to make sure that you're getting the hang of is using what we have as two different environments. One to let you collect data, and that's our production environment. And the second to just kind of play around like we're doing today. So I want to make sure that if you are collecting data, that you have the right URL. And here just above, we've got this maps.mrp held there. The first time you have to specify it and manually enter that in. And then as you can see in this screenshot, it kind of saves it for you to just tap. So I want to go over specifying a new URL and being able to use the training maps version to sort of like play and practice and exercise your abilities, and then going into the formal official production URL when you're going to collect real data. And it's very important that you make sure that when you're collecting real data, it goes in the right map. We don't want real data in a training map, and vice versa. We don't want test data alarming folks in a real map. So just to give it kind of a good view for you, and this is in your user manuals again too, that walks you through how to sign in. These are our two URLs. The top one is that official data collection URL that you would put in. And just to help you kind of sort these two URLs, because I know they kind of look similar, there's the difference there. So this top one says maps.mrp.usda, and the training one says maps-stg, as in stage. So if you see STG, you're in a staging environment, and you don't want real data in that staging environment. And my best advice would be, when in doubt, sign out. So I'll show you quickly when we get to the iPad how to sign out, but just make sure you've really got yourself comfortable with the Field Maps application and you are sure of which URL you signed into and which maps you're using. There's a couple of hints when you're in a training map. That little the background imagery is kind of light gray, boring, and the title says training right there in the title too. So there's ways for you to check that, but when in doubt, sign out. Make sure you're signed into the right URL there. So a little bit more planning. You know, like if you're going on a road trip, this lady probably can't go right straight through that mountain to get to the other side. Sometimes you got to go around a little bit. So today, please just pause with me to be sure you're using that best path to field electronic data collection success. I want you to succeed out there. And so I just kind of look me in the eyes and tell me your listening moment here. We talked a little bit about the pre-learning that you'll need: survey protocol, being comfortable with your device, being really familiar with the Field Maps application. And now we want to dive into the data collection itself. But there's something to really consider outside of just, you know, make sure you understand what's new, this what's new page for both of them, but also this disconnected workflow we talk about every year. And that's really part of kind of resisting that desire to collect data well connected, which might seem like a straightforward path, especially when you're using an iPhone, because you've got a data plan just waiting there for you that seems like it's the easier path. In this case, I'm asking you to kind of go around the mountain, do the planning that's needed so that you can work while you are disconnected in the field. And there's many reasons for this, but I'll give you a few. The number one reason is that ArcGIS Field Maps application is actually specifically designed this way to operate disconnected for field use. And this diagram kind of walks you through it, I hope, clearly. Basically, this kind of top half is well connected to Wi-Fi. And so this involves a little bit of preparation. I've done it for us today, and I'll show you that too. While you're connected to Wi-Fi, you'll sign into Field Maps. And again, you'll be careful. Am I in the training URL or am I in the production URL? Do I want to download the official map? You download a map area to your device for use, and then jump down to not being connected. Go on out there, collect data all day. Then we've got this arrow that kind of takes us back at the end of the day, connect back to Wi-Fi, and hit a sync button to synchronize the data you collected in your downloaded area back to that online source. And remember, we have scripts that are running overnight. So when you are syncing your data back to the online map from your map area on your device, you're allowing the script to include your data, your contributions. So it involves a little bit of prep here on the top, downloading that map area, but many times a map area can be used for an entire season. So it's kind of a one-time thing. Get yourself in order, make sure that you have yourself set for that. And it's really important to take the time to do that. and sync your data. And in fact, you can synchronize your data in the morning and in the evening. And what it does is it both pulls in all of the updates from those scripts that ran overnight into your little downloaded map area and pushes anything you've collected up to contribute to that whole online web map. So it's a good idea to do that twice a day, and it brings in all those updates. What it does is, number one, those scripts are the most effective if all of the data used is updated with that synchronization. Users in the field don't need to have a data plan. You don't have to worry about any interruptions to a Wi-Fi connection while you're out there collecting data, any intermittent connection, or maybe if you're in an area where you don't have connection, you don't have to worry about that at all. And any live views, even if it might be just a few of you out there remaining connected, does put an unnecessary burden on those servers. Too many operating this way can really slow operations down for everybody. So it's kind of a for everybody's sake, please don't operate while connected. And then finally, if that portal, that MRP GIS portal, experiences any issue, whether maybe due to a bug, an update, a server problem, or if the server has to be rebooted or something like that, the offline map can be continued to use without interruption. You might wait to sync your data to make sure that that portal is back up and running, but all of your field surveying can just continue as planned. So your day is not interrupted by any kind of issue with that portal. So there's some really good reasons for you to follow these directions, even though I know it feels a little bit like you're doing a little of extra work. It's going to save you a lot of work down the road. So this is probably a great time for a knowledge check. Remember those kind of old Scantron tests? They still use them sometimes. You had to use a little #2 pencil, and there was a machine that gave you a score for the piles of tests that you feed through it. Well, this is super less formal. You can just type your answer in the chat, or if you would like, raise your hand, unmute, and say it. This is where I would really like to check in. I'm going to just read you a scenario, and then I want you to tell me what you think the answer is. Here it is for you to read too along with me. Judy is just a random name I picked. She's a field surveyor. She prepared to collect data while disconnected, which means she has downloaded a map for Spongy Moth, and she hears that that MRP GIS portal is down today. There's no mention of when that issue will be fixed. Is she able to collect data today? Yes or no? What do you guys think? And bonus points for what Judy should wait to do. Should she wait to do anything? I've seen a lot of yeses. Just wait to sync. Anybody feel differently? Just planting seeds of doubt to make you wait. You're absolutely right. Upload data after the fix, exactly right. So great, awesome. Awesome, thank you. So yes, she's able to collect data because she is working offline. So there's a huge strength there. I'm being a little tricky, not too tricky. You guys got it. All right, so let's dive in a little bit into these layers. We've got, what I've done is taken a screenshot from my iPad. On the left side, you have the layers for Spongy Moth. On the right side, you have the layers for Flighted Spongy Moth Complex. And we've talked about these a little bit. This is how it will open up, where we have a markup layer that is activated on this, but probably shouldn't be. Usually these are deactivated. You can turn them on or off by just tapping on this little toggle switch. The active layer should just be the trap sites for this year, 2024. And then you can see they both have a cumulative specimen count layer, which can be toggled on and off. And remember, that's got a script running nightly, just keeping a cumulative count for that area. It's going to show you where there's a higher count and maybe guide some trapping. There's a map notes layer for making notes. And then there's the reference layer for the previous year's trap sites there that you can turn on and off also to help make decisions. And just to kind of walk through what that trapping workflow is like as far as how the data is collected, your first visit is where you are placing a trap physically in a location. And that first data being entered, that data entry is establishing the location. you're getting a latitude and longitude and some other fields on that location where you place the trap. The first visit also assumes that you installed the trap. So there's an install date field there on that data form. You don't have to fill out a separate form just on that first visit. It assumes you came, you placed the trap, and here's the location and some more information on it. But every time you come to that location again, all future visits is this bottom little associated activity. So you would tap on that location on the map where you placed the trap, and you would open an activity table and add the data for that visit. All trap sites start with the default of being current in their status initially, and then that status is also updated nightly by a script. And for a Spongy Moth, there's no standard interval for service. What it looks like, the legend for current, due, inactive for Spongy Moth is here. And for flighted Spongy Moth, that's every 14 days. So 14 days after the placement of that trap, that script runs overnight and will change the symbol on your map to due. And it has the same symbology. Here's the flighted Spongy Moth complex symbology. And it will change that symbol. So even on the map at a visual glance, you can see which locations are current or due or have been decided as inactive. And both, if the activity is removed, the status will update to inactive. And if you don't record an activity, guys, this is seriously important. I just want to get this through to you. If you visit a trap and you don't open the app, tap on that trap and tap the activity table and enter that data, it's like you saw a celebrity and you didn't take a photo. I don't believe you. It's not recorded. Nobody knows that you did it. So please be sure that when you visit a trap, make sure you're recording that correctly in that activity table. We'll look at that live together. It should not be recorded as a comment somewhere. This is a full activity every time you visit a trap. And so make sure that every time you visit, don't just record a visit as a comment, make sure that you're entering that in the activity table. All right, so another quick knowledge check. Field surveyor Allen, again, I don't know any Allens, I just choose the name, went to check on a trap. They opened the Spongy Moth data form, selected edit, added a comment, and tapped submit. That afternoon, he returned to the office and performed the data sync. Is this the right way to enter a visit to a trap? Pretty easy again, yes or no? What do you guys think? Again, bonus points. How should that visit to the trap be entered? Can anyone tell me? Enter it in the activity, not just the comment. Yay! Thank you guys. Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. The answer is no. Do not enter activities or visits to a trap as a comment. Make sure that you've added that as an activity. And if you're new and you haven't done this before, I'm going to show you what that looks like. But I just want to make sure just verbally you know that, and you do. So awesome. Thank you guys. There's another workflow that sometimes trips people up, so I just want to walk through that too. If you are relocating a trap or just removing it, that remove is an activity. So you want to enter that data, go to the symbol on the map where you have placed that trap, and there may be other activities previously. You will want to go to that activities table and enter a remove trap activity. And then if you're placing it in a new location, you would start fresh as if you were placing a trap. So you'd enter first an activity of remove on the original trap. That trap will stay put, but remember earlier we talked about how the symbology changes overnight. It will eventually say inactive the next day when that script runs, or it will not say, but it will have the symbol for inactive. So enter that remove trap activity, and that gets updated as being in an inactive location. Walk yourself to the new or drive yourself to the new location and place a new trap in the new spot. So one last little knowledge check here on this one that's kind of tricky. If you're going to relocate a trap, how many entries are recorded? First, an activity of remove that trap, the original one. Second, place the place the trap in the new location. Awesome, guys. Good work. All right, thank you. Okay, so let's have a look at that data form. We talked through it, what it sounds like, and gave you a couple visuals. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a camera with my PPQ iPad. And I have here all of our survey apps. I'm going to open Field Maps just by tapping on it. I haven't yet forgotten to show you the iPhone view, but if if in a second I just move on, please let me know before I stop sharing this camera. Okay, so what it's done is I've already signed in previously. It held onto the sign in. I was already in this map and it pulled me right into my last map. So what I'm going to do for the sake of showing you is go back, and I'm going to hit back twice. And this would be the view of all the maps that have been shared with you or are on the device or are current here that you would see. Now, again, I'm just going to hit it one more time. Remember, when in doubt, sign out. To sign out, just tap this little, looks like a little icon of a floating head, right? That's your profile. And you'll have to kind of slide up to the bottom, but we've got a sign out button right here. And so to sign out, profile picture, scroll up and sign out. And when in doubt, sign out. But I'll tell you, I know that I signed into our training or our stage portal, and I can show you a couple of hints. You're seeing a lot of maps that even in the little thumbnail picture say training, and the titles have training in all capital letters. So I know that these are all training maps. If you're not seeing this, sign out or get some help. Don't start entering data if you're not sure that you're in the right spot. We are. So I'm going to show you the flighted spongy moth map, and you can see right under the title that I have downloaded areas. It says offline areas. So I'll open that map card, and I am connected to the internet. I've got an internet connection. So right now it is listing for me the online map and my downloaded map. And I know that that's downloaded. It's telling me the how big it is and what date I downloaded it and all of that. But I wanted you to see, if you're seeing an online map, you should probably just disconnect from Wi-Fi. For my sake, I'm here in the office, so I wanted to show you that. Let's open this offline map area, which I have centered around my neighborhood. And you can see I've already kind of played around, and there's a few little things sitting there. One is, you know, a little blue square, and here's another symbol that looks a little different. Let's check out some of these icons along the top. Right away along the top right, I've got these two arrows, and that is your sync button. If you don't see two arrows, that means you are in a live version. So I will only see the sync button if I'm in an offline map. You want to make sure you see those arrows. So if I wanted to synchronize any data, I can tap that. And I can see I don't have a list, but normally if you are out there editing or adding points in the field or activities, you'll have a list here of what's waiting to be synchronized. I don't have any pending edits, so we're good there. I can decide to synchronize now by hitting this blue button. And as I recommended earlier, you can synchronize even if you have no pending edits, because that's going to pull in updates from those scripts that are running overnight. So that will update your offline map. This other little auto sync button, the toggle is off, and I highly recommend that you make sure that your auto sync is off, just like this. Auto sync is set up for if you are remaining connected, and what it's doing is allowing the device to decide that you have a good internet connection and synchronizing every 15 minutes or so whenever it senses that connection. But for all of the other reasons that we already talked about for being disconnected, we don't want this device making that decision for us. So we want to be able to synchronize manually ourselves once we've returned to the office and we have a really great Wi-Fi connection. So make sure that's off. The next little button or icon up here is your layers menu. And that's the little screenshot I gave you. Here we are in flighted spongy moth. So this should look familiar. A markup layer, our current trap sites layer. If we want to, we can turn on, toggle on or off, which I won't see anything here, but that would turn it on or off. I'm going to leave that on for a moment. Map notes points is a separate layer for making some notes if you want to, and this trap sites layer for last year. So I'm going to turn on those three and then point out this little three dots, this little ellipses is an overflow menu. So while those layers are selected, I can go to this little overflow menu and see what each of those are displayed as, or the legend for the symbols for each of those layers. And now we've got a little bit of clarity on what we're looking at on the map that I've been playing around with, right? So that little square, the blue square there, means that's a current trap site. I can see here that I have one that is due for service. And if I had a cumulative specimen count going, which I don't yet here, I could tell by the size of these orange circles whether it was 0 or a larger number. And then the map nodes points, I've got, you know, a couple of those that are placed there as well. And I can see one is for info, and this one might be a hazard, and I might really want to check that out if I'm going to be doing some trapping in the area. All right, so let's check out that hazard first of all. That would be my first thing I'd be worried about. And it's a little comment that I made that it's got kind of maybe not a great spot to put a trap because the water levels change and there's a lot of bird life there. So I just made that note. Okay, cool, no problem. And so let's say I know that I need to service this trap. It says that it's due for service just by looking at the symbol, but I also need to place a trap kind of, well, let's say this little blue dot is saying that's where my location is right now, but for the sake of demonstration, let's say I'm trying to space these traps out and I need one here. So to add data, you hit the add button. Add data, add button. That add button is down here on the lower right. I'm going to hit that. And what it's done is it's located me in a crosshairs, the GPS crosshairs. And the second I hit that add button, it said, we found you, here's where you are. And that blue circle tells me that we are meeting the accuracy. I'm in the basement of my house surrounded by concrete, so that's pretty awesome. I'm pretty pleased with that. If this was red, you would want to try to establish troubleshoot that and make sure that you're getting a better accuracy. But I'm doing fine even in my basement right now. For the sake of making sure that you can see it, I'm going to go ahead and space out. I'm going to move this location out from where I am so you can see the symbol. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new trap site. Now remember, I have this map notes points layer activated. If it wasn't activated, I wouldn't even see the option, but I have the option because those layers were activated. I toggled that blue. So now I have the option of adding a new trap site or a note, either one of these types. I'm going to add a trap site just by tapping that option. And it placed that point right under my little crosshairs. Probably some of you saw that pop in, that little square appeared right there. So that's been done automatically. If I needed to, in this case, I don't want to. You should always be right on top of where you're placing the trap and use your location. I could update that point and move it if I needed to. And then I've got a form here, and automatically this is that survey classification, that new field that pulls in a default value. If I need to change it, I can just tap on that field and choose a different option here just by tapping. The trap density, again, I'm not here to tell you survey protocol, so I'm probably going to get this really wrong. Make sure you understand your survey protocol to answer these, but in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and tap quickly. Tap to enter the install date. This is saying we're installing the trap. And what I like to do, because I tend to have a problem with, you know, accidentally tapping these calendars. Let's say I accidentally move that. I can tap today and see it popped us right back to today. And then I can tap on that line again and close the calendar. So once you have today's date and you're good, close that calendar up. It asks for the site name. And I'm just putting in, remember we're in a training map, so I'm putting in test data, and I'm not entering real data. This is just a training map. And I'm going to do that again, test data. Trap type here, I can, again, I tap which one I think it is. Lure, I'm going to tap an option, host. Now, host is kind of a long list here, and you can choose by tapping. You can also start typing in the filter. So if I start typing E, maybe L, there, now we've come down to Elm. You can kind of get a little auto entry going on there. Same thing for habitat. It's kind of got a long list here if you know what you're looking for. You can go ahead and tap something. I'm going to say that's an agricultural field. And then whether it's year-round or not is automatic, is defaulted to no, but you can change that to yes. Remember, by the tap, change it to yes. And the current status is also automatic. And currently the cumulative specimen count is 0. And there's a little note here that is maintained by GIS. That's that script that runs overnight. And when you come back to this and the script has run and there are specimen counts being added, you'll start seeing that number change. And then a little spot for comments. I'm going to use this to say test. Remember, coming back to monitor that trap, this is not a spot for that monitor activity, right? Everybody got that right. So hopefully you see that. I will not enter any activity data in a comment. And then a couple of groups of questions that are optional. If you tap it, it expands it. You can enter some address information if you have it, contact information if you have it. There's spots there for you to do that. And then always give yourself one last glance at did I enter all this right? If you need to, make some adjustments and then submit. And what this has done now is submitted that trap location and the data associated with it right here on this site. It's established that location. The latitude, longitude is up at the top, and all of your information in view form is right here that you've just entered. But something changed here with these 2 arrows at the top. This sync button now has a little dot on the outgoing arrow, and that's just a little hint to you that you now have data waiting to go out in your map. And if I tap this sync button, there it is listed. We've got 1 pending edit. So it's sitting there now waiting to go out. It's just in your map, kind of like a secret until you sync it back to the online map. Now, let's say we do need to service this one that's due. So in order to do that, I need to select that trap on the map just by tapping it. Sometimes our traps are kind of too close together, and so our screen might read several traps like it just did. And so I have a list here that I can choose from. I'm going to choose this guy, and you can tell that it's been selected because it's got this kind of halo of blue around it. And you might also want to make sure that you've checked that it is the correct one to service, maybe by the trap ID. Okay, test 2, that's the right one. So some people might, might want to check by that, or maybe the site name, some unique identifier. Just be sure you've got the right one. And then either this link little button icon at the bottom, or if you scroll to the bottom of this view of that form, you've got the option, which has a link next to it again, the trap activities table that's associated with this location, this trap. So you want to open that trap activities table and add an activity. And I can see no activities have happened yet on this location, but if there were, you'd see the whole history of all the visits to this trap listed here that you could view and edit and be aware of whatever you needed. So we're going to add a trap activity by tapping add. Now we've got another little data form, and again, it's asking us for a few things. The survey type is a new field. I'm going to say precision delimiting. It's pulled in a default for the agency, but if I needed to, I could choose, let's do state cooperator. The surveyor's name, there's a little hint there. It says first and last names. Okay, I can do that, can handle that. Wants to know who's surveying, and activity date. So remember, there was an install date for placing the trap. Now we're giving it a date for this visit back to this trap. Same thing with the calendar. I like to make sure it's today and close it right up. Keep that date safe. Automatically, we've got monitor as the default, but you could change this. I'm going to leave it as monitor because that makes sense to me on the first visit back. And here's that field that will kind of react to your entry. Number of suspects suspects, not identified. These are suspected specimens collected. So let's say, let's go with 0, okay? And I'll close that up, and nothing happened. And let's go in and let's change that instead to 4. Done. And now we have a new field, and that's that sample name. So the system knows that you have collected some suspects, and it wants the name of that sample. So that's your sample ID here. And I'm gonna really just give it a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 3, give it a random name. And then there's a spot for comments. That's optional. Because we're in a training version, I'm gonna make sure it says test. I wanna make it super clear that this is not real data. And then I'm going to go ahead and again hit submit. Now that symbol has stayed the same, but remember that is updated nightly. So I'm going to make sure at the end of the day, after I've finished all of these guys, to synchronize all of my edits so that that symbol can be updated. It should flip back over to being current. And so that's just an example of how that might work. Let's look at this sync button one more time. Now we've got a monitor activity and that first trap that we placed. Now let's just walk through that workflow one more time of maybe relocation. Remember, there are 2 data entries to do. The first one is to go on into that trap site. So let's say this guy is going to be removed and relocated. So we want to select that guy. I can see it's selected. I've checked that it is the right trap ID that I want to remove and relocate. So first I will have to go into that activity table. I can see that it's been monitored a couple times last month. There's that list. If I need to, I can just tap and open those forms. I'll do that for you. So there's the last time it was monitored. Yeah, we need to go back and exit back out to this spot. So we're going to add a remove activity. Survey type, I'm going to leave that as precision delimiting. I'm going to put in my name. Activity date, make sure that's today. And under the activity type, we're going to remove trap, just plain remove trap for this relocation. You might choose something else for another activity. There's no suspects collected. In this case, there could be. I'm going to write test in there. Check it over one last time. Okay, remove. Now, just like this update, we're not going to see a difference in this symbol until it's been synchronized and that script has had a chance to run. But that symbol is going to stay there. It's just going to get that, let's look at the legend one more time here. It's going to get that inactive symbol, that yellow symbol, right? So we've done the remove, and then we would just go ahead, walk ourselves or ride ourselves to the new location to add a new trap, add button. There we go. And we'd start afresh. Now, I promised you that I would show you on my iPhone, and I didn't forget. It's a smaller screen. I'm going to put it right on top because I think it's important for you to see the difference in these maps here, if we can. And what I've done is, what I've just shown you was the flighted spongy moth complex map in the training or the stage version. So you see the background's all this kind of light gray. And just to give you the converse, I've got the spongy moth map, and I'm signed into our official data collection, our production environment. So you don't see any training information here. And when I go ahead and tap the spongy moth trapping map, I've got my little, I'm connected to Wi-Fi, so you can see you have the online map here, and then you have my downloaded map. And even though we're on an iPhone and I have that connection, I want to use that downloaded map and work offline. I can stay online if I want to, but I would really recommend that while you are trapping and using this system, make sure that you disconnect from that Wi-Fi. But let's open that downloaded map here. Again, this is my neighborhood. See the difference? It's real imagery. You can see that this really is an agricultural field, and this really is a neighborhood, and you can see all the trees and all of that imagery. If you see imagery, you are entering real data. And if you see this kind of blanket light gray, you're just playing around and practicing. And we encourage it, just make sure you're in the right spot. And you can see I've got much better GPS accuracy going on here, but it's had some time to load. I have all the same icons along the top. There's my sync button, my layers button. It's going to open it, kind of split the screen on the bottom. If I need to, I can kind of pull it up and have that be the full view. I can go ahead and open up some other layers if I want to. I can exit out of layers. And now that those are active, I have these same 3 dots. I have the same legend here. It's all the same, smaller screen, just a little bit more, real estate to work with. And entering data is the same. Adding a point, placing a trap is this add button lower right. It opens that same option. Whatever layers are active, you have these options here. You would go ahead and tap to add a trap site. It's adding that right under me. Let's move it out so you can see that. I'll update the point. So see, now that little point has been added there. I've got a data form that I can scroll up. The same form appears. Enter your data, check that over, make sure it's all right, and then you would hit submit. Now, I don't want to do that because we really are just playing around, but it's the same scenario except for in a smaller screen on your iPhone. And the only caveat for iPhones I would give you is just really do take the time to use that disconnected workflow. Do make sure that you are trying to do that. Did I miss anything in demoing this for you all that that's coming to mind? Is there anything here you'd like to see again, or wasn't long enough, or you missed? Alrighty, then we're going to stop sharing that if I can get the right buttons. Guys. All right. Okay, so that we looked at both maps briefly, but we really did demos on the flighted spongy moth complex, and we looked at the iPhone view. Some things some little reminders. Make sure you're in the correct URL when you sign in, official rather than training and training rather than official. Be sure you're using that disconnected workflow, and be sure you're syncing your data. That's how those scripts get updated and how your map gets updated so that you're doing the best work you can every day. Be extra careful with your data collection. I'm the worst at that, so I'm really just talking for myself, but make sure that you're reading those prompts, that you're entering the data consistently, and always give it one more look, especially that date field I have trouble with. The map notes layer we didn't go over. There is information in your manual, your user guide on that. And really it's meant to kind of share things. One thing about the map notes layer, it is a shared layer. It's not for official data collection. It's really just informative, or like I showed you, kind of a, maybe don't place a trap here, it's a little inconsistent, or something like that. Or you could say things like there's a dog here that's not great, or an owner that's awesome and will give you lemonade. But the map notes layer that's at the bottom of that list there with the little question marks that are red or blue symbols, the map notes layer is shared across everyone. So be careful what you're entering there, and that it really is helpful to everyone. Not official, not for official data, and shared to everyone. The markup layer is a default layer that just comes along with field maps. It lets you kind of draw things and make notes, but it's private to you. So use that if you find that that's helpful. It probably is not as helpful as the map notes layer. And make sure that you're familiar with using those if that's something your supervisor wants you to use. And one thing, if that submit button, when you tap that submit button fails, it's usually because you have not met that GPS accuracy. Remember, we were looking for that blue circle, and it kind of keeps you up to date on that. Now, I get it in my basement, so it's pretty rare, but the submit button will fail if you're not meeting that accuracy, or if you missed a field. So if there's a required field, it's going to let you know, hey, you missed this required field. Key takeaways. If you walk away remembering one thing, I think it's that mobile data collection tools website. And so I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat again. Make sure that you are checking out the manual for your pest. So if you are going to collect data for spongy moth, or if you're going to collect data for flighted spongy moth, make sure you're checking out the things that are new. Make sure you have an understanding of that. Watch this video again. It'll take me probably about a week to get it up. But even maybe a month or so after you've been out there servicing traps, make sure you're following that intended path. Remember that lady maybe deciding how to drive to get to the other side of the mountain? Make sure that you really are following those steps the way that they're supposed to. And watching this video again could be a great way to just make sure you're on track. Every manual also on the last page has a getting help page, and really support should always start with your supervisors, but there's also a link to submit a support need to my group, the end user tools group on the website and in each of our email signatures. And we really do want you to succeed. So please don't feel shy about reaching out if you need some help. Are there any questions at this point? And I know I asked you to save them to the end, and I hope it wasn't too hard to do that, but please let me know now if there's anything that I missed or if you have any questions. All right. Well, please take away from me my sincere hope that you have success out there. You're appreciated. Your work is appreciated. And don't forget this mobile data collection tools webpage. Make sure to check back here for everything that you might need. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you, everyone.